phonation, vocal techniques, and breathing exercises. Let's start with breathing. We breathe to perform respiration, which is a process to oxygenize blood and to remove the carbon dioxide from the blood. The breathing process begins with inhalation. Air moves through the mouth and the nostrils to the nasal cavity. The air then passes through the pharynx, then the epiglottis, then the larynx to the trachea, which is called the windpipe. From there, air goes into each lung by the left and right bronchus, which further go into the bronchi and divide into bronchioles. Finally, the bronchioles end in sac-like surfaces like alveoli, where oxygen diffuses into the blood. Exhalation starts by taking up CO2 from the surface of the alveoli and up the bronchioles. Exhalation is completely opposite to inhalation. Now I'll briefly explain every part used in breathing. We breathe in with our mouth and our nose. The air goes to the nasal cavity. The nasal cavity has tiny hair and mucus which filter the air and warm the air before they reach the lungs. The mucus in the nasal cavity is produced by the sinuses. From there, air travels to the pharynx. A pharynx is a common area for food and for air. So here is when the epiglottis comes into action. It's a flap, and it makes sure that the air goes into the windpipe and the food goes into the esophagus. After the epiglottis is gone, after we go through the epiglottis, we come down to the larynx, which further goes down to the windpipe, trachea. Here the windpipe is divided into two bronchi, left and right, which provide air to both lungs respectively. The bronchus then divides into bronchioles, which are small tube-like structures, and they become smaller as they go deeper into the lungs. These small bronchioles further end into alveoli. You see the sac-like structures? This is what increases the surface area. So it's very easy for oxygen to diffuse into the blood and for carbon dioxide to be picked up from the blood through the higher surface area. We have lungs. Lungs are spongy organs that have the bronchioles and the alveoli, and they help with breathing. The lungs are inside the bone structure that protects it, the ribs. The ribs move upwards and outwards when we inhale, and they move downwards and inwards when we exhale. This white membrane that you see over here is called the pleura. The pleura helps the lungs to move smoothly in the ribs during inhalation and exhalation. Between the ribs, we have muscles that help us move up and down with our chest cavity, and these are called intercostal muscles. The diaphragm is the most important part. It's an elastic organ, and it stretches and goes downwards to increase chest cavity, and it goes upwards when it wants to expel air out of the lungs. The vibration causes the sound. The larynx is a voice box. It's where sound is produced. Larynx connects the pharynx to the windpipe. The larynx in men have larger folds, deeper pitch, and the larynx is around 17 millimeters to 25 millimeters long. The voice range in men ranges from E2 to F6. Male singers are categorized into bass, baritone, tenor, and countertenor in the increasing order of pitch. Larynx in women have thinner folds and produce higher pitched sounds. The length of the larynx is around 12.5 mm to 17.5 mm. The voice range in women ranges from F3 to C6 and can go higher. There are 3 types of female singers: contralto, mezzo-soprano and soprano in increasing order of pitch. Further in the presentation, when I will talk about anterior, posterior, superior and inferior, anterior means in front of, posterior means behind, superior means above and inferior means below. The larynx has bones, cartilages and muscles that cause the phonation. I'll talk about the bones and cartilages now. The hyoid bone sits anterior to the larynx. It has muscles superior to hold up the tongue and inferior is where the larynx hangs. It transmits the force of muscles that help open your jaw. Thyroid. It is the largest cartilage of the larynx. It protects the vocal folds that are immediately posterior. When the angle of the thyroid cartilage changes relative to the cricoid cartilage, it changes the pitch in the voice. Cricoid cartilage maintains the airway patency, provides attachment point for key muscles and cartilages in the larynx. The epiglottis, which is a leaf-shaped elastic cartilage, sits posterior to the hyoid bone, anterior to the laryngeal inlet, and flaps food to the esophagus and air to the trachea. Corniculate cartilages are embedded inside the folds. They provide a degree of solidity and support vocal cords and lateral aspects of the epiglottis. Arytenoids form the trichoarytenoid joint and joins the vocal cords. Where they come together, they tilt anteriorly and posteriorly and rotate, which helps with pitch. The muscles that are in a larynx are named simply with the structures they join. Thyroarticulovocalis with exhalation loosens the cords and lowers the pitch. Lateral trichoarytenoid with exhalation narrows the aperture, so we whisper. Tricothyroid with exhalation stretches the cords to increase the pitch. Posterior trichoarytenoid widens the aperture for inhalation. The transverse and the oblique cartilages open the aperture and they also bring cords together for phonation. The laryngeal inlet is the entrance of the pharynx into the larynx. When we look at the larynx, we divide it into 3 spaces. The first space is the vestibule. It's superior to the larynx and it starts from the inlets and ends at the folds. The smallest space in the larynx is the ventricle and it is from the vestibule to the vocal folds. The infraglottic cavity is inferior to the larynx. It starts with the inferior part of the vocal cords and ends near the first tracheal ring. Thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage and the epiglottis. These are all unpaired cartilages. And arytenoid, corniculate, cuneiform and triticeal cartilages are paired because you have 2 of them. The back of the vocal folds are attached to arytenoid cartilages, which is near the spine. The folds in the front are right under the chin and they are attached to the thyroid cartilages. The folds have no outer edge. they blend into the windpipe, and the inner edge of the fold is free to vibrate. All of these parts produce sound. But how do we convert the sound into words? We do this with the help of articulators. The tongue, the palate, the cheeks, the teeth, the lips, these all filter sound coming from the larynx to help us articulate. In public speaking, we need to articulate. We need to use vocal techniques. So I've listed 15 vocal techniques here, and I'd like to explain them to you. The first one is articulation. Precise speaking so that the audience can comprehend you. The articulators play a very important role here. Audibility. You have to project yourself appropriately so your audience can hear you. Accent. If you recall earlier in the presentation, I made sure to call it a mezzo-soprano instead of a mezzo-soprano. Clarity. Accurate formation of sounds. Again, articulators play a huge role in this. Emphasis. Stress on words to highlight words or improve comprehension. Fluency. Combining qualities of vocal performance to produce integrated effects for the audience. Inflection. Variation of pitch and tone to clarify emotional quality and intended meaning. Inflection comes really from the larynx. Modulation. Variation in pitch is modulation. Pace. Speed is ensured to maintain your energy and the vibe. Pause. Breaks in delivery denotes many important things, and the pause lengths are also very important. It can indicate objectives for a character. Pitch. The intensity of vibrations in the voice, its pitch, and we can come to know about this through the transverse and oblique arytenoids. The variation in pitch creates inflection. Resonance. Muscle control. Focused projection to intensify body resonators. You need really good command on your diaphragm and your lungs. Rhythm and variety. Use of pace, inflection, beats and pauses. Refers to the shift in performance and also the overall structure. Tone. It suggests emotional qualities and conveys a sense of character subtext. And the last one, vocal dynamics, where you use appropriate variation of all the techniques I have mentioned to denote intensity of emotion, meaning, and mood. Vocal techniques are the correct use of articulators, the larynx, all the cartilages, the muscles in it, the lungs and the diaphragm. But what's most important is posture, and you have to exercise. Because breathing exercises and vocal exercises are needed to help with your technique, increase your stamina, and reduce muscle strain and stress. So here are some vocal exercises, and I'd like to demonstrate. I'd like to demonstrate humming. Then we have tongue trills, where you take your tongue and attach it right behind your teeth. You have the loosening of the jaw, which makes sure your projection and resonance is intact. And sirens. Wee, ho, wee, ho. Before I start my breathing exercises, I would like you to take a moment and wonder and check if you are breathing correctly. Place your hand on your abdomen. If you breathe in and your abdominal cavity expands, you are breathing correctly. However, if you breathe in and only your shoulders rise, you are breathing incorrectly. Practice these exercises to start breathing correctly to increase your stamina and make sure you don't strain your lungs or your diaphragm. After all these breathing exercises, I'd like to demonstrate alternate nostril breathing. I use my thumb and my pinky finger. The next one I'd like to emphasize on is deep breathing. When you deep breathe with correct intervals of time, it can improve the way you breathe for a longer period of time. Ensure that you breathe in for less counts when you breathe out. Huff cough. When you try to cough straight from the belly, you try to expel all the air from there. That's a huff cough.